Welcome to the Basketball and Brew podcast, produced by Jude McLaren, and I'm your host, Dan Miller. Thank you for joining us for this week's podcast, and please help us out by subscribing to our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are watching. And please give us a follow on Twitter. Tonight's podcast is brought to you by our two sponsors, both right here in beautiful San Marcos, Texas. Pie Society is an excellent stop in San Marcos for great New York-style pizzas made with the freshest ingredients, local beers on tap, and overall fun and cool vibe. And come into Zelik's Ice House when in Central Texas for happy hour drink specials, their outside patio, and a great time with friends. We are extremely excited tonight to welcome tonight's guest, UNLV head women's basketball coach, Lindy La Rocque. Coach La Rocque played 4 years at Stanford, winning 4 Pac-12 regular season and 4 Pac-12 tournament championships and advancing to 4 Final Fours. After her playing career, she was a GA under legendary Oklahoma coach Sherry Cole and was an assistant at both Belmont and Stanford before becoming the head coach at UNLV in 2020. In her 2 seasons at the helm, she has had unprecedented success at UNLV and has been named the Mountain West Coach of the Year in 2021. And this past season, the Rebels went and won the Mountain West regular season and tournament championships and won 26 games. Coach La Rocque, impressive resume. Thank you for coming on tonight on Basketball and Brew.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Excited to talk some hoops.
Excited to talk hoops, Coach. And before we dive into offense, because I do want to talk to you about your offense, I really enjoyed watching it on Synergy this last week and just seeing everything that you guys do offensively. I just wanted to start how you got into coaching. I'm always curious to hear how coaches start. You've obviously played for some great coaches. How did you and when did you know you wanted to become a coach?
Well, great question. I think that is definitely, at the root of why we do what we do. But I grew up in a family of educators. So both my parents were school teachers, my grandparents were school teachers, every aunt and uncle and cousin, it felt like they were all school teachers. So I think education is really my foundation. And so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And then luckily I was able to have the exposure to basketball. So my dad was a high school coach here in town in Las Vegas, and a basketball coach, and he ended up being pretty successful and did it for a really long time. So I kind of grew up in the gym. And so I remember, as a young girl, it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It wasn't an astronaut or a doctor or a lawyer. I wanted to be a high school coach and build a dynasty and be a math teacher.
There you go.
And so, that's kind of just where my roots are. And then, again, having the ability to be in the gym at a really young age and get exposed to some great basketball players helped me to kind of build my own skills. And then, in college and kind of since then, I've really at least done a good job of finding the best ones to follow and learn from. So between Atara and Sherry, especially, I mean, 2 of the greatest really of all time. So I'm thankful for just having some great mentors and leaders to really help encourage me to not just stay on this path, but really grow and learn and kind of find my way myself.
I love that, Coach. And with those Stanford degrees, Coach, you probably could have been an astronaut. So if you wanted to, but we're glad you chose basketball. I know UNLV fans are definitely glad you chose basketball. Coach, those great coaches that you were with, how did they influence you and kind of influence your philosophy of how to run a program?
I mean, I think the really cool thing for me is I like full circle moments. Obviously one being back here at UNLV in the place I was born and raised in Las Vegas, but even before then having a chance to play at Stanford. And then before I got this UNLV job, having to coach at Stanford, really with the same staff that I played for. So that was probably my first full circle moment. And so being able, as a player, the student athlete side, and you have an idea of what your coaches are kind of doing to prepare you and scout and recruit, and because you're involved with that a little bit. But once you kind of flip over to the other side, then your eyes really open up to a lot of things. And so Once I kind of felt like I knew a little bit about the business, especially I learned a lot from Sherry at Oklahoma because that was arguably like my first job, my first experience outside of Stanford. And so just totally seeing a different view and way to do things was really, I think, powerful for me. And then I went to Belmont and had a great experience there. But then coming back to Stanford and thinking I knew a program really, really well, but then seeing the other side of it, I think that's really where it was like, okay, there's definitely a different side to running a program than I
Right.
thought I knew, or what it takes. So I think that's really where I was able to learn a lot about not just coaching and all that it entails, but how much goes into building a program, running a program, managing people, all of the above.
Right, right. That's great, coach. And I know it is very interesting when we as coaches have players who come on this side of it, and then they're just like, those scouting reports didn't come magically, or those, arrangements on travel didn't come magically. No, the coaches are behind the scenes, they're working, they're preparing. Coach, I got to ask, how cool is it to be back in Las Vegas, to have your success there at home? Like, how cool is it to do it in Las Vegas?
It's more special than I could have ever imagined. I was born and raised here, and
Hmm.
I'm thankful my parents still live here, and a lot of friends and family and just people that I grew up with are still here. But I'll be honest with you, like once I left, I was like, I'm never coming back. Like, see you,
Yeah.
mom and dad. You can like come visit me wherever I am, and they did, and so that was great. But I guess you never say never,
Right.
because here I am, and it's really special. Obviously, there's COVID. I got hired during COVID, and then, our world kind of went crazy. And so it was really special to be near my family, especially at that time
Sure.
when a lot of people weren't. So that I'm thankful for that. But then just to have the built-in support, on the good days, the bad days, not just my parents, but our neighbors and my old high school friends. And there's just, a lot of people here in Vegas that I've known for a long time or known my
Right.
family. So to be able to share that with our community has been really special. And then I think it actually really motivates me to, give them a product that they're really proud of. And I
Right.
think that's another level of just doing a really good job that I think about every day.
Right, right, doing it for your city. I love that, coach. One thing about your program that I noticed when we kind of took a deep dive into it, coach, is you have a great culture of trust, a great culture of love with your players, with your staff. Just seeing how your players talk about you and the staff, and it's just real neat. Coach, could you talk, not X's and O's so much at first, but just talk about the culture of UNLV women's basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trust kind of there, first and foremost. Again, being hired in a COVID time was really interesting because we couldn't do any basketball for the first 6 months.
Right,
I literally got hired, and then like our world shut down, so all we could do was get to know each other. And we would have done that anyways, but maybe not to the depth, or maybe not have allocated so much time to it. But that's all that we could do. So we did really a deep dive with that. But then, um, I think it's about really getting to know our young women as people, not just basketball players, investing in them and what they like and what they don't like, and their families, because we are going to have really high standards and expectations, and that is like a pillar of our program, is that
right,
we are going to excel in what we do. We're not just going to do it to do it, but we're going to be really intentional. And so I think when you have such, high demand, so to say, you have to balance that with like, I'm going to coach you really hard, but I'm going to love you really hard, and I'm going to show
right,
you why I'm doing this, and help you understand that it's not just, basketball is life, although, sometimes it feels like that, but have them really understand it and then get their feedback. And I think that's where we've been able to build that trust, where it's not just, it's not just my way is the highway.
sure,
They, I want our we want our players to feel like they can give us feedback, they can have input, and what do they want to do? What do they not like to do? And I think we've had some great success,
Mhm.
obviously establishing
Yeah.
some of that. So
Yeah.
we've got to keep it going.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I noticed I like what you said about the why, knowing your why is so important. And I'm sure they do it with everything but academics, being that your parents were teachers, being that you went to Stanford. I also noticed that you guys got like the highest team GPA in a long time. Can you talk about that, coach? Is that something that you talk about as a head coach of a big college, or is that, what attributed to that being so
Um,
successful academically?
yeah, well, I think that's a huge piece to the culture too of,
Sure.
something that I say at nauseum that our team probably gets annoyed with, but how we do anything is how we do everything.
Mm,
And it starts really in the classroom of, how can I expect you to come in and do extra work and get extra shots up if you won't study a little bit extra on this
right.
exam when it requires that, or that do this extra homework or go see that teacher. And so for the current team, it's really making them aware of that, of it really matters. I mean,
Yep.
we've held players out of practice for missed, assignments,
Mhm.
and it's like this is the privilege,
Yeah.
the education piece. That's the non-negotiable.
Yep.
Um, and so then now, obviously, now that we've been here, that's a huge piece of our recruiting. Of
Sure.
obviously, we're transcripts and looking at those
Mm.
things
Yep.
matter, especially once we get started talking about hoops. We require a lot, and so um, being able to have that capacity to handle a lot, because
Right.
if you're good academically, that means that you can manage your time, you can prioritize what's important, you know how to get things done. Um, and those skills really translate to being a good basketball player and managing your time, and all of the things that we really want and need our players to do to be successful at both.
Yep. It's so important, coach, because the ball, is going to stop for everyone, and you got to fall back on those academics. And you guys are doing a great job to go with all your winning. But speaking of hoops, speaking of winning, coach, you guys run great offense there at UNLV. Can we just start with the offense, just with your general kind of overall philosophy on offense before maybe we kind of break it down and dive in a little more?
Sure. Um, well, as we're getting to know each other, I was never the defensive stopper. Better in my time. I think even Tara may give me some credit at that, but I was, a three-point shooter. I love to score the ball, like most players these days, I guess.
Right.
And so that's really just what resonates with me. And so we teach and coach our offense first.
Yep.
And so I think kind of some of our foundation of our offense is that we want to play fast and play
Yep.
up tempo, and score points, score a lot of points, and do it at an efficient level.
Yep.
Because I think it's fun to play, it's fun to watch,
Right.
and it there's a lot of joy that comes in playing that way, I think, or we
Right.
believe. So
Right.
it starts kind of with that of, I think we averaged just over 75 points this
Yep.
year, which was like, top, I think maybe 50, maybe even higher, maybe
Yep.
top 25 in the country.
Yep.
So we're
Yeah.
doing something right, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're definitely, coach. When I saw the synergy ratings, everything was on excellent. So you're definitely doing something right. How do you balance, coach, freedom of play versus calling plays with your players?
Um, I think that's the great dilemma of
Hmm.
coaches, right?
Sure.
Our, livelihoods kind of rely on this, but you can't just totally be an offensive play caller like you can in football.
Yep.
But if there's no structure, then you have no control over the outcome either. So it's a
Right.
really fine balance. I think how we've tried to tackle that is, obviously it starts for us in transition. So we have some principles in transition and some rules that we want to um, follow.
Sure.
And they're not so rigid to where, if if something's out of place, it doesn't totally shut down what we're doing,
Yep.
but then it goes to the next thing. So I think it starts in transition. But then, my staff laughs at me all the time, but I call it our meat and potatoes.
Okay.
And so we have a continuity offense that's pretty flexible in just for the most part revolving a little bit around a ball screen and a dribble
Yep.
handoff.
Yep.
And that's our meat and potatoes.
Yep.
But it can shape and form and be really flexible to the skill set or the personnel that we have in. And so I think that's how we balance, giving them really great spacing to be able to make plays, but then giving them the structure so they know when something breaks down, like where are my people going to be?
Right.
Um, because you don't want to just totally be on an island. So that's how and then of course we have sets and
Yep.
there's time and score situations, and that's when you call plays. But
Sure.
if you want to play fast, you can't call a play every time.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's kind of what can get lost sometimes of like, well, you can't say you want to play fast and then have, 80 million sets and literally stop your
Right.
point guard and call a set every time. It's like, well,
Yep.
those two things are a little contradictory.
Right, right. And coach, I noticed your pace, and I love the pace that you guys are playing at and playing fast. How do you get your girls to play, your ladies to play so fast, coach? In practice, is it a lot of 5-on-0, fill in the lanes and different fast break drills that way? Are there breakdown drills, or is it just through your live play? How do you get them to play fast at that pace you want?
I think there's a fitness component for sure.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, we eventually like we want to get to a great fitness level.
Hmm.
And for us, it's about like building throughout the season, so then we're peaking at the right time.
Hmm.
So there's fitness, I think, involved. But it's exactly what you said. We do a lot of 5-on-0,
Yep.
just some like 3-trip transition breaks, where we're running our lanes. And frankly, we're given, almost everyone an opportunity to be the initiator,
Right.
So of course we kind of have designated point guards, but if you want to play fast, you have to allow your other guards to get rebounds and push it and then have them be able to make those decisions. So we play kind of a lot of just transition games is a little bit of
Yep.
what we call it.
Yep.
And mainly so a lot of people get the decision making practice as much
Yep.
as just handling the ball.
Right.
And so I think that's where, and most people may not totally think it, but the way we score most in transition is getting to the basket and feeding our posts. I
Yep.
think we play fast because we have post players that can run the floor.
Right.
Um, and so when they're leading the break, then they're not in the way of the guards. And
Right.
so, that's our post players are a huge key to how we play in the half court and in the full court.
Right, right. Coach, getting your post to run hard, I that did jump out at me at film. And when you go into your post early in transition, so impressive. And that's something honestly that we're struggling with right now a little bit. Is there anything with the post players in particular to get them to run down Main Street or however you term it? Because they get there, and I like that when I watch film.
Well, you have to reward them, you
Hmm.
know, and I think just as much as encouraging your post players to run, you have to get your guards to throw the ball.
Right.
And not every time, of course, but you have to, again, kind of evaluate some of that risk and reward of, you may get a turnover, but they know you're looking at them. They know you're trying to get them the ball, and they'll keep running for you. If you
Right.
have a post player that's running the floor 40 minutes and never touches it, then they're like,
Yep.
"What am I doing this for?"
Right. Right.
Um, so, similar to why we want our wings to run wide and run the floor too, we've got to get them the ball. So I think it's practicing and encouraging, kind of the reward, and then they
Yep.
know if I get missed once, it's not because it's not ever going to come. It's just,
Yep.
maybe they saw something that I didn't, and there was a
Right.
defender behind me that was in a blind spot.
Right. Right. And that goes back to your trust in your program, coach, that you talked about with your culture, that you have
Yeah.
that trust. I like that a lot. Coach, can I ask about the spacing in your fast break a little bit? Do you have your wings run all the way to the corner? Do they stop free throw line extended, or what do you prefer with the fast break spacing?
Yeah, great question. I was actually doing a coaching clinic earlier in the month, and they had me talk about building our transition offense. And so,
Hmm.
um, so for us, it's maybe not as traditional, but we kind of term it as a balanced or a loaded floor. So you can think balanced as your traditional right wing, left wing,
Sure.
rim run post player taking it out, outlet and the trail, and
Sure.
the point guard person, And so I think, that's really how the game was played for a really long time. We actually, and again, so we encourage that. That's great, but sometimes that's not always how it works out. And so then you might
Yep.
have a loaded floor where both wings are both on the same side,
Right.
either on the same side as the ball or even opposite the ball. And we encourage that
Okay.
because we want you to get out and we want you to get wide as fast as you can. So to answer
Yep.
your first question, yes, we run to the corners.
Okay.
Or have our guards run as deep as they can, mainly because if there's someone on the same side as them, then they have to occupy the wing.
Yep.
Um, and so we run deep to the corners. I love to have a post at the rim.
Hmm.
And then, especially when you get in a situation when it's a loaded floor, either on one side, that really opens up one side of the court for your point guard to create.
Right.
So that's where actually you can really feed your post better because they're, all of the defense is also on that one side.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I think that's a little bit more newer school of thought.
Right.
I think it really, really helped us, especially this year, being able to be more efficient in transition.
Yep.
Sometimes having a non-symmetrical balance floor.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I like that, coach, a lot, because sometimes when you get two wings crossing the tee and running up there, do you we push one through? And I like that loaded floor concept. Coach, are your players kind of interchangeable? Are you traditional a little bit where you're the 4, the 5, you're running trail, or is it, interchangeable offense as far as your spacing, I guess, and pushing that ball up the floor? Because I heard you talk about decision making. Sounds like you like all your players to be decision makers.
Right. Um, a little bit of both.
Hmm.
I think we like to have our guards interchangeable as far as being able to rebound and push.
Right.
We definitely have a designated outlet and a point guard, but we can play 2 point guards at a time. And then for the most part, we like to play 2 traditional posts,
Yeah.
mainly because that's where our offense,
Yep.
how we can really get the ball inside. So
Sure.
now those 2 posts are pretty interchangeable. Um, and if they have some perimeter shooting ability, then that really, can really stretch the floor
Yep.
for us.
Yep.
But we don't play like a 5 out offense where it's like
Yep.
totally positionless where
Yep.
anyone can do anything.
Yep.
So that's where I think we have a little bit some solid structure.
Sure.
And like we've got a new team, so we're excited kind of this summer to maybe try some different things and
Yep.
test out some different lineups. So we're not totally rigid in what we do, but typically it's a three guards and 2 posts that kind of really helped create the great spacing.
Right, right. And then, coach, when you do flow into your ball screen action or call sets that have ball screen action, can you talk through a little bit? I know some coaches will want their post to roll every time, and you mentioned that if you have a shooter, that helps things. Do you give the post a little bit of freedom to read the defense, or are you having them roll, short roll? What do you like the post to do in the ball screen game?
Yeah, I think, the ball screen and really some of our action comes out of a dribble handoff, which is
Okay.
like the same idea.
Yep.
I think first and foremost, it's having guards that are willing to attack.
Yep.
And it starts there because it doesn't matter if they roll or pop or whatever. If you can't create some sort of advantage for
Yep.
themselves or the screener, then you might as well just pass it on to the next person.
Yep.
So having some guards that can attack and on to multiple levels. We really like teach first to like run to the basket, even different than like rolling open to the ball, but screening and turning and going to run
Okay.
to the basket,
Yep.
to try to, again, kind of whatever you teach them first, frankly, is what they remember most. So
Right.
if you
Right.
teach them to pop first, then they're never going to roll.
Right. They're going to pop every time.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
um,
Yep.
so, and then I think it's, identifying different skill sets and kind of giving
Yep.
them some parameters of, if you aren't really a 3-point shooter, then you can short roll.
Sure.
And really, I think the biggest thing is teaching them how to read the coverages.
Right.
So the scouting report is big for us so that we can anticipate how they're going to guard our handoffs and our ball screens so that we can really drill that, specific for different games of, if someone's really trapping or going to hard hedge, then you can't roll anywhere. You got to be available for the ball and short roll maybe,
Right.
and then we've got to take advantage of the situation.
Right.
Versus, there's a bunch of different coverages, so it's mainly a little bit predicated, I think, on the coverages that we see most, but relies on a guard to attack, and then teaching our forwards all the different ways,
Right.
to run to the rim first, get your money there, then that will open up the other things.
Yep. Yep. Oh, that's awesome, Coach. Coach, the next thing I got to ask is when I was watching film, you guys are awesome at baseline out of bounds. I mean, you just do a great job. I see them out of the box set. I love how you have different actions, whether they're sprinting to the corners, popping back, getting the ISO, getting into the flex, just all different things. First, I got to ask, is that fun sometimes just diagram and draw stuff up? Are you stealing some of your ideas? Because how are you such a good baseline out of bounds coach?
Well, from our first year to our second year, that was something that we identified. We
Okay.
really needed to be more efficient.
Okay.
I am just like a firm believer of like the ball is like 3 feet from the basket and we need to score.
Right.
Sometimes that's as close as you will get to the basket in a possession.
Yep.
And um and so there's again, it's like a double-edged sword of you can't have 500 baseline out of bounds plays because then they run none of them well.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
but then you've got to have some so it's not the same one every time.
Yep. Yep.
And so I think, I really credit our staff for finding some really good baseline out of bounds plays that have some misdirection,
Yep.
really put people in the right spots. And then we were really efficient. That was one thing kind of looking back at when we got a baseline out of bounds, I was like 2 points,
Yep.
And
Yep.
in a game that comes down to, really inches or,
Yep.
possessions, those are really critical. I mean, you can argue that like we won our conference tournament off of a baseline out of bounds
Yeah.
or at least sealed it and
Sealed it. Put it away.
that
Yep.
execution. So, and then once you kind of get some buy-in from the players, they really like it too, because then they like
Right.
start calling their own number and,
Yep.
run this one for me.
Yep.
And so we kind of had a good balance of we probably had, 4 or 5 in our rotation. And then we had a couple special situation ones that we would practice but hold on
Okay.
for special situations. But to answer your question, yeah, we steal like based on out of bounds plays from whoever we like that we think
Yep.
our personnel.
Yep. Well, I stole some from you guys now, so
Yeah. I'm glad
I'm
you
excited.
recognize that. Most people
Yeah.
don't like they see the
No.
points, they see maybe
Yeah.
some of the 3-point shots or how much we're scoring.
Coach, yeah.
But
I watched all your baseline out of bounds pretty much for the whole season, and the thing about it was too, Coach, everyone who maybe didn't touch the ball did their role so good. Like the ones who maybe are sprinting to the corners or doing some false motion or whatever it is, masking it, they do it hard and they do it good. So it opened up for the two people that were the primary scorers or touch the ball. And as a compliment to your program, Coach, they did it very good.
yeah, thank you. I credit our staff because teaching that and
Yeah.
really, again, throughout the course of the year, you have to drill those over and over and over.
Right. Right.
So we dedicate time to that too.
Right. Coach, speaking of dedicating time, I was curious what a practice would look like maybe in October. I know you're offensive oriented. I love that. We are too. So, first, I guess maybe just the percentage. Maybe is it a certain percentage on offense and then defense, and then what would it look like in October? And then as the year goes along, do you maybe cut minutes into practice to save legs and things like that? Can you just talk about practice a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think that's like the golden ticket.
Mhm.
If you can have some great strategy from October to really February of how you're going to manage your practices, how you're going to plan them out, um, I think that's how you win in
Right.
March.
Right.
Um, for us, so I am like pretty analytical or very strategic in our practice planning. So I work really closely, frankly, with our strength and conditioning coach. There's all these different, metrics out there. Our
Sure.
team wears one of those, first beat, heart rate monitor, GPS kind of systems, and so I really use those
Okay.
and look at those numbers, and we work together to again, for us, I don't need our team to be in the best shape in October.
Right.
Really, I don't need them to be in the best shape in December, but I need them to be in the best shape in February.
February.
So for us, instead of like a full out like preseason, that's like hell for a lack of a better term.
Sure.
We want to be in a constant fitness building mode, really,
Mhm.
until like conference play, which is early January.
Yep.
And so that's where those metrics come in. And, if I know we're going to have a really high intensity practice, then she balances out either her lift or whatever else she's doing the team with that. And then
Mhm.
for a practice when, some of our October practices, this is where it's like really planning in October of, for the most part with our rules, we're like five days a week.
Yep.
You really kind of have to have 2 days off just with how we count the days and the numbers
Sure.
and whatnot. So of those 5 days, we have like two really high intense practices, two lower practices, and then a moderate.
Okay.
And so what a high intensity practice looks like um, is like from drill to drill, full court drills, and frankly, a lot of 5-on-0 stuff. Most people would assume that playing 5-on-5 is where it's most intense, but if you have practice guys or depending on like the amount of players you have, it's
Mhm.
actually not as intense as you think.
Okay.
So a high intensity one is typically shorter and just like from one thing to a next, a lot of full court drills, a lot of 5-on-0 things, and really going. Then typically right after a high intensity practice, we'd have a lower intensity practice. And that's
Okay.
what like we are teaching.
Right.
We are teaching for an hour and a half today. We're
Right.
learning a piece of the offense, we're putting in a baseline out of bounds play, we're putting in a new set. And so
Right.
it's like a total mental overload,
Right.
but not physical. And so, because you can imagine when you're teaching, what are they doing around?
Yep.
Standing,
Yep.
listening.
Yep.
So it's not really
Yep.
like very high intensity.
Right.
Um, and so then afterwards, then a moderate will kind of be a little bit of both of like,
Okay.
okay, we just overloaded you yesterday mentally. Let's review some of that. And then let's do it at some game pace, but not like at, 100
Right.
an hour.
Yep.
Um, so that's kind of what October looks like for sure, especially leading up.
Mhm.
And from a percentage wise, to be honest, it's probably like 80% offense, maybe
Offense.
85.
Yep.
We shell drill. We kind of
Yep.
teach principles. We'll
Yep.
break down a screening action of how we
Yep.
expect to, guard a cross screen down screen
Yep.
or,
Ball
a
screen
stagger
up.
screen, right?
Mhm.
And of course, like some ball screen
Yep.
coverage.
Mhm.
But those are things that it's also for defensively we're really scouting report. So until
Yep.
we kind of really know who we're playing and what we want to take
Right.
away, we kind of build our rules, build our foundation,
Yep.
and then once we start playing games, then obviously defense becomes a little bit more important. I mean, it is
Right.
important, but
Right. Right, for sure. But I know exactly what you're saying. And then the scouting reports come. This is how we're guarding this action, this, and this is what we're doing. But you can't practice 20% of practice on offense and think you're going to be good on offense. You have to work on it to be the high level offense that you guys are.
Right.
Yep, I love that, Coach. Next question goes to shooting. You guys are a really good shooting team. Free throw percentage off the charts. 3-pointers made. I think it was a school record. Um, how much shooting do you spend in practice? And then also, is it some of it outside practice because you're recruiting intrinsic players who want to get those extra shots up? How do you become such a good shooting team?
Yeah. I mean, great question again, and I think it's a little bit of what we just kind of finished with too. Like, tell me what you value, and then tell me where you spend your time.
Mm. Yep. Yep. Right.
And for us, shooting is a priority
Yep.
because if you want to be a really offensive team, you've got to be able to have some shot makers.
Yes.
And so the free throw percentage, while I was like over the moon about it, sometimes that's just like hit or miss. You can practice all the free throws that you want, and sometimes your players are making them, and
Right.
sometimes not.
Right.
And it's really getting the ones that are shooting a lot of them to be, more efficient makers.
Yep.
But we obviously shoot free throws in practice
Yeah.
too, and in some
Sure.
pressure shooting situations. But as far as regular shooting, we, kind of my rule of thumb when creating a practice plan is that before every identified water break, we do a shooting drill.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so, and I try to really stick to that because if you think in a 2-hour practice, I mean, you got to give them a water break at least like every 30 minutes, so that's four shooting drills there
Yep.
alone,
Yep.
not including what you may do for your warm up or whatever.
Yep.
Because it's really important. And yes, we love to recruit, gym rats and ballers that love to be in the gym and do extra, but you don't know what they're doing there.
Right.
And so, and it's just that you leave that up to chance.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Right.
if that's going to be how we're going to play, I'm not going to leave that up to an 18-year-old
Right.
to invest
Right.
that.
Right.
We're going to invest in practice. And then whatever they do additional will just help them get more playing time, frankly, and
Yep.
be better than, the player
Yep.
next to them so that they're the one shooting and someone instead of someone else.
Right.
And so we do a lot of shooting in practice.
Yep.
And that's, I think people that come and watch our practice, that's one thing. We have a lot of different team shooting drills. We're lucky for the most part when we're in a practice gym that has, 4 hoops, we can get 3 people to a hoop and knock out, a lot of shots in 10 minutes, like per person. But yeah, we have a lot of team shooting drills because that's, what it ends up looking like on the court. So we invest a lot of time in that.
Yep. I like that, Coach. And do you do the shooting drills before your water breaks? Are they competitive or are they winners losers? I'm sure you have so many you can't explain them all. But do you have a lot of shooting drills that are competitive with winners or losers?
I think you have to.
Have to, right?
A
Yeah.
lot of like our team ones are kind of number based,
Okay.
trying to set a team number of like we've got to get to this number, and then when they don't, sometimes I'm like, okay, do it again.
Okay. Yep. In so many minutes, they
and
may
you
need
don't
to
get
make
your
so
water
many
break,
shots. Yeah. Right. Yep.
or
Yep.
you get a shortened water break, and then
Yep.
sometimes it's like, all right, we don't have time for this. Like, give me a down and back.
Right. Right.
Because if you don't tie some sort of, some sort of measurement to it,
Right.
then maybe
You're
they
just
don't
shooting.
shoot it as, as efficiently that they should be thinking about it.
Right, with the game intensity, and you're controlling that. Before, I like that a lot, Coach. With your offense, what is it with freshmen coming in maybe that they struggle with the most? Because, or is there one? It's hard to break down one specific thing. I know all freshmen want to come in and get all the minutes in the world, but it takes a little time, and everyone has different, times where some people maybe it pops, and some people still they're upperclassmen. But is there anything that you're finding that freshmen is a little bit harder to teach? And takes a little bit more time with new players?
I think there's a couple things that stick out, really. We have our freshmen here like we got them here this last week, so
Nice.
we're kind of reminding them of some things. I think one thing, like right when they get to campus, is just the intensity at which things are performed.
Yeah.
They're used to being the best player on their high school team, and how whatever pace that they went was probably way better than the next best person.
Right.
And so I just think the intensity, like we
Right.
have, you can do an hour workout with your skills trainer, with your high school team, and it's like, that was an hour workout. An hour workout with us is like, you are dog tired.
Yeah.
If you aren't, then I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Um,
Right.
even if you're in like great physical fitness,
Sure.
and, of course the fitness thing is always an adjustment for freshmen,
Yep.
but you expect that's like not out of the norm. But I
Right.
think most, they get really wide-eyed, and they're like, you get done with the first workout and they're like, I can't think and shoot
Right.
and run at this pace, and there's so
Yeah.
many things, so I think just the
Right.
intensity, um, of just workouts in general, and then they kind of get their footing there, and you have some
Yep.
great leadership to lead them. Once we start getting into games and practice, I think the second biggest adjustment is just the capacity,
Yeah.
their mental capacity to,
Sure.
on their high school team, maybe they had 5 or 6 plays
Yep.
and
Yep.
1 or 2 baseline out of bounds plays. And for the most part, you can always like times that by 4.
Yep. Okay.
So it's like we've
Yep.
got, even we have a continuity offense, but we will still by the end of the year have, you know, 20 sets at least of
Still.
like
Hmm.
of now we don't put them all in November, but
Sure.
gradually by the end of the year, it's just so it's just how much they're stretched, mentally,
Right.
um, and then they want to perform well, and then you add in like for how we play defensively for a scouting report. So,
Yeah.
we're not the defensive team that this is what we do against everyone, no matter who they are.
Yep.
We change our plan with every game,
Yep.
and we're really player tendency oriented. So if there's a right-handed driver and she drives right on you, like, we aren't going to be thrilled with that.
Yeah. Right.
um,
Right.
and so I think then you add that, they're just like, their mind is
Right.
blown,
Yep.
so I think just at first it's the intensity adjustment, then there's like a capacity, adjustment where, they don't know what they don't know.
Right. Right. Yep.
And, half the time I'm trying to tell them to like give themselves some grace, and you're doing fine.
Yep.
And I know it feels like we're going a million miles an hour, but that's because the other 9 women have been here.
Right.
We're going to bring you along, and you're going to do great, and you're going to have great opportunity, and just like stick with our process and the course. And just in the meantime, don't beat yourself up, because,
Right.
you know, we're going to coach you. So we'll do enough of that.
Yeah. Right. And then it's so fun when you see them kind of the light bulb go on with things and they become calm with the scouting reports and then they're just running. But that intensity of jumping to Division I basketball, I don't care how good you were at your high school, that's a whole different level when you get to a successful Division I program. That's an eye-opening. But that's fun, Coach. That's fun for those freshmen. And it's also important that you have those upperclassmen to keep their confidence, even though they're beating them in all the drills and everything. And I know you have great upperclassmen there at UNLV. Coach, recruiting wise, what are some aspects that you're looking in for recruiting? And a just kind of curious question, because you're so offensive driven and you want great shooters. Do you ever see a player maybe who you like everything she does, but she doesn't shoot it good, and still maybe recruit a player? I know you can't do too many like that. So what are just some things and some aspects when you're out and able to recruit that you're looking for UNLV basketball?
Yeah, I think evaluation is just such a critical skill.
Hmm.
Now as the head coach, I really rely on our assistants to be
Hmm.
great evaluators, and I'm like so fortunate and lucky that we have some veteran assistants that have done this for a long time, so they can really
Right.
evaluate talent. So then we can talk. on a needs based of really what we think we need, down to like skill set and athleticism and size and position.
Right.
So I think it's really trying to identify some of those things. And then, it's a full picture. I think for us, we try to really do our diligence of, again, just as much of the academic is important, really getting
Yep.
to know their support system, their family, who they refer to as their
Yep.
family, and what that support looks like. But from a skill set standpoint, I will tell you that, like, I do think even great shooters in high school, again, they just don't know the volume at which it has to occur at this level.
Right.
And so if someone's got all the tools other than like, they could be a better shooter. For me, I'm like, if it looks good, I can work with it.
Okay. Yep.
Because, maybe call us overconfident, but the amount of shooting that we do, we can
Yep.
make someone a good shooter.
Yep.
Or an average. And are they going to be prolific? Maybe not. But with the amount of time that we put into shooting as a team and in practice,
You're gonna improve.
you're only
Yep.
going to become a better shooter.
Yep.
So sometimes it's like, the form is really important to me.
Sure.
Especially like post players, when we're recruiting post players, if they're not shooting threes yet, or really even high post shots, I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, what does their
Yep.
free throw look like? Can we work with that? Okay, cool.
Yep. Yep.
And then that gives us, areas to expand their game. Now, for
Yep.
guards, obviously, there's a little bit more of a priority that they can at least make a shot.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to consistency, it's like, okay, well, we can get there,
Right.
because of the volume.
Right.
But yeah, no one's going to be totally like have the full package.
Right.
So I think for us, where we've had great success is collectively as a staff, really being able to identify what we want.
Right.
And it changes every year based on our roster, based on our needs, positional needs, athleticism needs, skill set needs, and then trying to compare them to players that we have and players that we want. So there's multi dimensions to it.
Right. Right. And you're exactly right, Coach, about identifying. And obviously, you guys are doing a great job of identifying talent and players with your roster, and you're doing great things. Coach, we're almost out of time. I have a couple more questions I do want to get to. One, just being a younger head coach of a major program, Coach, and being the CEO in charge of it and having this success so early, Coach, is obviously so exciting. But I know you still have so many goals for UNLV basketball. Is there anything in your coaching career already at your age that you just look back and you just say, I'm just really proud of this? I mean, I know there's a lot, but I mean, is there anything that just jumps out, Coach?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think this last year was just so special.
Sure. It's a great season.
It was, sometimes you get around a group that just has a really special synergy and you can feel it. And kind of midway around that December kind of Christmas time, we had our challenges, our obstacles, and then it just all kind of clicked,
Right.
and we're all of them at once, and roles were accepted, and people were just fighting, and fighting in a good sense, not with each other,
No.
but
Yep.
fighting like for each other.
Yep.
And
Battling.
we just had a really great synergy. So I think, and then to have the outcome, because sometimes you can have that special group and you can still fall short.
Yep.
Which doesn't make it less special, but it just, maybe it doesn't stick with you as long. So
Right.
to be able to, win the regular season, which is really hard.
Hard.
And then to follow it up and win the tournament.
Yep.
I can like still vividly see their faces and their
Yeah.
dancing and their joy, and I'm like, I know that's going to be a team. Some of those memories that I will remember forever. Uh,
Yes. Yes. That is awesome, coach. And getting up on that ladder when you win the conference tournament is so special. And coach, how many ladders have you been up on?
yeah.
I'm just thinking of Stanford. You got up there as a player, 4 times, 4 times. Coach, it's awesome. It is so good. Coach, last question I'll leave you with. This has been so good. I just want to thank you again for coming on. But last question, and this is kind of almost comical to ask it, but I ask all our guests about restaurants in the city they live in. And most of the time it's college towns in the middle of wherever, Texas, but you're in Las Vegas, coach. So do you have a favorite spot, or where do you like to go in Las Vegas, coach?
Well, now I might. This is where you actually maybe get some real criticism, I guess.
Okay.
People frequent here.
Yeah, right.
Most people stay on the strip, and there's a lot of really good restaurants on the strip.
Right.
You're going to pay a little bit more. They're going to be a little bit more expensive because
Sure.
of their location.
Yep.
I do not live on the strip,
Okay. Okay.
so most people don't.
Yep.
But I think there's a couple of spots in town. One of them being Piero's. Cuisine is one of like the original Italian restaurants in town. It's actually just off the strip. We
Okay.
took our team there for our Christmas kind of
Oh,
dinner
cool.
because they did so well academically. It's
Yeah.
like where Tark's spot was.
Oh, okay.
They did
Okay.
have a
Wow.
Tarkanian room.
Yep.
It's like it's authentic,
Yeah.
old, real Vegas.
Okay.
Amazing food. Of course, like I'm kind of family with the people that own it, so they'll
Yeah.
probably appreciate the pub. But for the most part, people kind of know about Piero's,
Right.
so it would probably be my one go-to spot when people come into town and they're like, we want something different, something real, something old school Las Vegas. Then that's where I send them.
That's awesome, and I love that it's Tark's spot too.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's authentic right there, Coach. This has been wonderful. I know you're busy, a head coach, major college, for taking the time being on Basketball and Brew podcast. Best of luck moving forward next season. Congratulations on all of your success, and thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah, for sure, Dan. I appreciate it. And, we've done well in Texas,
Yes,
and we're excited to hopefully get some upcoming games on our schedule in the next couple of
good.
years, get some of our Texas young ladies home. And we're still recruiting the area hard. So hopefully there are some Texas people tuned in
Yep, there will
and
be.
continuing to learn about our Lady Rebel program. So really appreciate you having me. And this was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. In Texas, we have some great basketball here, so I'm sure you'll have some more players coming your way from Texas. So thanks a lot, Coach. Have a wonderful night.
Okay. You too.
Thank you. Wow, that was so great to have Coach La Rocque on there, an absolute star in basketball, excellent program. And if you get a chance to watch UNLV basketball play, watch them and just see the great offense in action. So thank you again to Coach for coming on. And just a reminder to everybody, if you enjoyed tonight's podcast, please hit like on YouTube. Please follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, or subscribe on YouTube, as that really does help our podcast grow. That's the one thing that we ask. But thank you so much for joining. And we would also like to thank again our sponsors, Pie Society, if you're in San Marcos, excellent pizza, beer, spirits, and Zelix Ice House. Great time, great patio, great happy hour. I want to thank my awesome producer, Jude McLaren, for making all this happen. And we'll be back again soon. And we can't wait to have another episode of Basketball